Good morning and good evening to India. Welcome to USINPAC's Expert Analyst Conference Call and Leadership Dialogue. The title of today's call is the 1-month review of Prime Minister Modi. Moderating our call this week from India is Mr. Ravindra Sachdev, and we also have Mr. Sanjay Puri with us. We hope our attendees understand that we have to mute everyone upon entry, as it would be very hard to hear our panelists otherwise. We do also have some difficulty with our WebEx today for some reason, so our apologies if there are any glitches. Everyone should have received instructions as to how to submit questions, and we again thank those who have already contributed. I will be asking those questions, if any do come in separately, and I know that we have had some people join and submit questions previously. Those joining via WebEx will see a Q&A tab on the right to submit questions to the host and our expert panel. Now to start this special expert series conference call, I'd like to first introduce the Chairman of USINPAC, Mr. Sanjay Puri. Sanjay?
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to host our weekly dialogue on our leadership series on U.S.-India relations, the USINPAC Leadership Dialogues. Every week we have done this, starting from the election area. And now today, a very important topic, the first month review of the Modi government. As the Prime Minister himself has said, his honeymoon is over. It was a very short-lived honeymoon. And in the world of 24/7 media, high expectations, basically there might be a 24-hour because we are in the world of Twitter, 160 characters, etc. But to analyze this, we have very, very good speakers, and we appreciate all the questions that have come in. It's literally been hundreds of questions coming from around the country and around the world. We have members of Congress, their staff, Indian Americans, leaders who have contributed, and it's going to be a very exciting dialogue today. So without much further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sudha Garg, who will introduce our panelists, and then to Ravindra Sachdev, who is our head of our India operations. Dr. Garg.
Thank you, Sanjay. We have two speakers today, two experts today, Dr. Sudha Malaiya and Dr. Russell A. Green. We will first introduce Dr. Sudha Malaiya. I'm very thankful that she picked up our call and she accepted this invitation. We know that she's traveling. Dr. Sudha Malaiya is the National Secretary for BJP. She has been an active contributor to socio-political, cultural, historical, and educational activities for the last 25 years in India. She has continuously undertaken multiple activities for social development and upliftment of women and children. She has focused a lot on the education of women, especially. Endeavors such as Ojaswini Samadarshini Vyas were taken by her on to empower women, promote entrepreneurship, and support arts and culture. The Ojaswini group of educational institutions were founded to provide quality education to the youth and children of rural Madhya Pradesh. Dr. Malaiya has been very active in politics for the last 34 years, since 1977, and she is considered to be a great asset in BJP. With this introduction, I hand it over to my colleague, Ravindra Sachdev, the Director of India Affairs Desk. Ravindra.
Thank you so much, Surabhi, and once again, welcome to both of our eminent panelists that we have today. Dr. Sudha Malaiya would be the first speaker and the first discussant. And ma'am, before you start, may I just remind our callers that please do keep sending us your questions as the call and the discussion progresses. We have definitely received quite a few questions, as Sanjay, my colleague, was mentioning in the past few days, ever since we announced this call or this discussion. Now, ma'am, the floor is yours. Could you give us a few minutes of your overview on this topic of the day, that how does one look at the past 1 month of the Modi government? Your thoughts, please, a few minutes, and then we'll get into the questions and answers and discussion.
Yes. The fact is, the Narendra Modi's government, BJP-led NDA government in India, the kind of support and the affection and confidence it had in this government is overwhelming. And the way the government is moving, the directions and the directives it has given, clearly shows that whatever this government is going to do is only to serve the national interest. And each moment of last 30 days of this government has gone to serve the national interest. There are things which even the Prime Minister of India has said that there are things which they would like to improve. And people also thought that this is a new government and they will take time to learn few things. But now it is clear to everybody that they are ready to learn. They have started learning and they are ready to move the country. And the first diplomatic move which Narendra Modi has made is to send the message to the world by inviting all the SAARC countries to his oath ceremony. And by this, he has sent the feeler that India means business now. And India is strengthened, India is strong enough to handle its matter on its own, and nobody can take it for granted. So, and he invited, we want friendship, we mean business, and we want the same, that everybody should be treated equally. We don't want to pressurize anybody, but we don't want to get pressurized by anybody else. So we have to behave in equal terms. The visit of President of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, is also a very milestone, which people were wondering, and very skeptical about it, that whether Narendra Modi will have good relations or maintain good relations with Pakistan or not. So he has already given that message, and it is really appreciated by all the countries in the world. Number two, he sent the message that to his cabinet colleagues that everybody, each department should have their 100 days plan and to implement whatever policies of the government are there, which are running and which are to be executed in further, which are to be newly made policies, whatever it is, in all the departments. Then he also gave the directives that no minister is going to have their relatives in the government like that, as in the form of their OSDs or private assistance. That also has sent a good message. He has also tried to boost up the morale of the Indian naval forces, the Indian armed forces, and all that by visiting the INS and dedicating the ship to the naval forces. And also, I think the message, this food security bill, which has been introduced by the previous government, UPA government, and in September 2013, was not implemented in 19 states of India. So he has already given directions, sending instructions that it has to be implemented in all the 29 states in India, and it has to be seen that whether the pre-monsoon, if the monsoon is good or not. So he's worried about all the aspects, and this is a good sign. Many people have tried to criticize him. You know, there are the controversies started even within 100 hours. That is what the Mr. Prime Minister has said. I have not been given the 100 days of the honeymoon period. They have started criticizing me within 100 hours as compared to the 67 years of the previous governments. So any government, if one has to prove or one has to perform, it has to be given a little time. But this government has started working since the very first moment in the government. And I think it is doing well, and whatever decisions are being taken by him are in the direction of the national interest. It will serve the national interest. People do allege that he has come in the power on the basis of that he will stop inflation and it will decrease. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, we can.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Everybody can hear you, Dr. Malaiya.
Okay.
Please continue.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes. So everybody was skeptical about that, but then he has proven himself. The controversy was about this HRD minister, appointment of HRD minister Smriti Irani. Then they were about the Mr. Nihal Chand and Mr. Jagat Singh's status. But I think they are all in the stride, and Smriti Irani as MHRD minister will prove herself. The time will time will tell that she is a very great orator. She's an intelligent person, and she can do justice to her department. And also, what Minister Jagat Singh has said, Jitendra Singh has said about this Article 370. I think that is one thing which India should go about, and we should have a healthy discussion and a healthy debate and open debate about this Article 370, which has served no good to Jammu and Kashmir and also not to India. It is not desirable that any girl who belongs to Jammu and Kashmir, if she marries to what they call the people in Jammu Kashmir, that she marries to an Indian, her citizenship will not be there, and a Pakistani marrying a Kashmiri girl will get the citizenship of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, so that has to stop. This kind of discrimination should stop, and it has served no good, and this is a very good move which Mr. Jitendra Singh has opened the debate. Even our Prime Minister has opened this dialogue, even before becoming the Prime Minister and in his election speeches. So there is nothing new about it. That is not controversial, and those who don't want to have this, they are not doing no good to India. As far as the other controversies are concerned, they are just political controversies. Narendra Modi's government is moving in a very good direction, and that direction is to serve the national interest.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am, so much. I think you really, covered, most of the areas in which we had some questions already there. So I'll probably pick some of them which are there, and we might, have a deeper analysis or your views on those. One of the questions which we got earlier was that, and which you already answered, if you can maybe summarize it or give it a focused view on that. What do you think have been the challenges in this last 1 month for the Prime Minister? We do understand, and I think everybody is appreciating hard work ethic. But what are the challenges do you think that the Prime Minister has faced in the last 1 month?
The biggest challenge is to convey to a select group of people about their sincerity, and within and outside the government system. The government has completed 1 month in the government, and the support and the affection of the people is really good. And 67 years of previous government is nothing compared to 1 month. That is what I said. But it's the entire team of Narendra Modi has devoted every single moment for the welfare of the people. So the challenge is, that is what I said, within and outside the party. So outside the party is because the other political parties have been defeated. They have faced a very, very, what do you say, a very bad defeat. They've been defeated very badly, and people have rejected them outright. And many of the parties have not even have the single seat in the parliament. So they will be vocal about, and they will be criticizing the government's policies. And the biggest critical point which they want to criticize is, that is key. Modi has not been able to decrease the inflation, but he has hiked the prices of the railway fare. This is one criticism, severe criticism the Modi government is facing right now. But they are, in the given circumstances when we are having the disturbances in the Iraq and other Gulf countries, so when the petrol rises and the diesel prices are hiking everywhere, so we cannot control that. And to put the economy back to on its rails, we have to take certain measures to put the economy, which has really gone out of the rails, to take some stringent measures. It may hurt the interest of certain people, but when people are ready to pay for 8 kilometers, 200 rupees for an auto rickshaw, why can't they pay to the government of India, which is going to improve the improve the situation of the railways in India, which is in a very bad shape. So this is the biggest challenge, and the biggest challenge of those people, the people who really don't want to work in the interest of the country, who have not been working for the last 67 years. They are working, whatever they were doing was against the interests of the country. They have been talking loudly and vehemently all the time about the secularism, but they were the biggest and greatest spokesperson who were against the secularism, and who really were the greatest factor to break this secular fabric of the country. It is the Indian thought and Indian ethos which BJP believes in, that it takes everybody in its stride and it respects everybody, but no favors to one group or the other group, or the believers of one faith or the believers of the other faith. Everybody has to be seen with the equal eyes, nobody to be appeased and nobody to be favored, nobody to be discriminated. So that is what the BJP's policy has been, to serve the national interest, and that is the only way to see India a stronger India, and a stronger India, a self-reliant India, and a better India, and a beautiful India.
Absolutely.
And so, yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think you laid out a very clear-cut and a very, I mean, the amount of clarity there is absolutely wonderful what you're sharing with us. The question which would be that, and as you mentioned that, coming back to the question, I think the Prime Minister also mentioned in his own blog on 30 days completion, wherein he did mention, as exactly you're saying, that there are some sections both inside and outside the government who are not convinced, and the government needs to do maybe a better job to persuade them. The question which we had coming based upon that blog of the Honorable Prime Minister was that, how do you think that these sections who are not convinced can be convinced, especially the ones who are inside the government?
He has already shown his inclination. Listen, there are policies and there are intentions. The intentions of the government is shown in his first speech to the Parliament, when he was answering the presidential speech, to the president speech, and then he said that clearly. This government is for the people of India. It is for everybody. It is not for the people who belong to the BJP party or to the NDA, but it is for all the people of India, to all the parties. That is a clear, very clear-cut message. And he said, not only those who are sitting here, those parties, those political parties who have sent their representatives here, it is the government also for them who have not been able to send even one single representative in the Parliament of India. So he has given clear messages. If they have to be taken in their what it means. Actually, if they don't want to take it, then it is part of the game. It is their problem. It is not Narendra Modi's or his government's problem. It is their problem. Slowly and gradually they will come to terms to this government, and they will see, the people of the India will have a clear view of this and clear perception about this, what this government is up to and what it means, and that they really mean what they say. It is not that we say something, preach something, and do something else. They really mean what they want, they are saying. And the country will believe them. And people have also started saying, except for those so-called secularists who really wanted this country to be divided again, who want that Jammu and Kashmir should remain with India. Though they are disturbed, and that is their problem. It is not the country's problem. People have overwhelmingly voted for him and for his policies, for his views, on each and every given matter. He has said that if I want to do something for my country, that my country, people of my country have got the right to save drinking water. They have got the right to save, for their washrooms and all, and they have got the right to food, they have got the right to education, they have got the right to save drinking water, and they've got the right to 24 hours availability of power. So this is what their government is up to, and they also have got the right to move on the right kind of roads and transportation, means of transportation and infrastructure. So we are moving in that direction, and also to safeguard the interests of the security interests of the country. Nobody should dare to look at India like that and take us for lightly. We are strong enough. We are strong enough to safeguard our interests and our security.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I think that was a very, once again, a very, contextual discussion and your response. I'll move on to another question, in fact, but there was something on the 370 debate, but before that, I will come to another question which had come in earlier to us, I think, a couple of days ago. This question is asking us that in this last 1 month, as you were mentioning, of course, the government has been working very hard. But there have been several portfolios which do not have independent ministers, or several portfolios which are being handled by a minister in charge, so to say, or one cabinet minister handling 2 portfolios. So that's been something the last 1 month. So the question which was coming in was asking that, do you think in the next few weeks we will see more ministers taking charge of some cabinet portfolios?
I think there had been something in the air that Mr. Prime Minister may expand his cabinet. The second expansion may take place after the budget session. Well, I'm not sure about that, but there was something in the air like that. And a few ministries which you are mentioning about is about the Defense Ministry and about this Urban Development Ministry which has gone again to the Rural Development, Development Ministry, which has gone into the hands of the Urban Development Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, because of the unforeseen death of Mr. Gopinath Munde, and several other portfolios which may be given, which may be handed over to the other ministers, may take place. That's right.
I see.
Yes.
I see.
But Mr. Narendra Modi is of the belief that minimum government, maximum governance. So that is his idea, and he has also clubbed 2-3 departments in one. Earlier in earlier governments, we used to have the Ministry of Culture and Ministry of Tourism independent ministries, but they they gel with each other and they go together. They are actually complementing each other. So there should be only one ministry for that, tourism and culture. You cannot have development of culture without the Ministry of the Tourism, and Ministry of Tourism cannot function without the Ministry of Culture. So like this, there has been revamping and reorganizing of the departments of several ministries, but there is a possibility of the expansion of the ministry, right?
I see. No, thank you so much, ma'am. We have another question coming in, and as you know, of course, that we have our audience, our callers, our members are the Indian diaspora, especially the Indian American community in the United States, and everyone has been following this idea of the 100-day plans of the various ministries which they are working on. So obviously, the interest is in the Ministry of External Affairs, or more focused on the Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs. So the question was asking, or is asking us, that would you happen to have some idea about the 100-day plan? What is the Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs looking in these next 100 days? If you have some, maybe you may not, but if you would have some.
I really don't have much idea about it, but I had a talk with the Minister of External Affairs, Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, and she said that earlier, even I have traveled abroad a lot, and I asked her, well, people overseas, Indian NRIs and all, they don't feel very secure and safe, and when it comes to the safeguarding the interests of the Indian citizens overseas, and that something should be done about that, and that so that they feel that the Indian embassies or the Indian high commissions are for them. Indian high commission. So she pointedly said, yes, I know that, and I'm very worried about it, and I'm concerned about it, that the Indian high commissions or the Indian embassies are not merely to float parties or like that. They have to serve to the Indian citizens, serve in the interest of the Indian citizens staying abroad, and we will see to it that if anything comes from Indians residing abroad, their problem should be taken care of. And also, I asked her that whether it is possible to have more centers and more where their problems can be handled exclusively besides the diplomatic relations. So she said, yes, we are moving in that directions, and we will be doing that. And right now the problem with the External Affairs Ministry is to handle the Iraq problem, where 50 Indians have been kidnapped, and we have not been able to do say any clue about that so far. So the first major concern is that only right now, and well, I have yet to have more insight of that.
No, I mean, I think that's very encouraging and very interesting for, I think, for us, our leadership committee, as well as, I think, several of our callers, because the points that you mentioned, I think, more maybe consular offices, the visa issues, and several of the issues of the overseas Indian community are really, really very burning, perhaps. Now, in that, maybe I would like to share that, I think in the next couple of weeks, we are having a delegation of our leadership committee members coming down to India, and perhaps, we could look to have a discussion with you or with the Honorable Minister regarding some of these issues. I think we could touch base with you.
Most welcome, and I think they will be able to have an appointment with the minister, and they will be able to see her. And she's a great minister for that matter, and she's really concerned about the interests of all the Indian citizens, and not only Indian citizens, whosoever visits India, and whosoever is interested in India, whosoever loves India. So we are all concerned about their interests and their support. And I remember the day when there was a nuclear explosion in Atalji's government. I was there in New York. That was in May 1998, something, 11th May or 11th June 1998. I was there in New York, and how the overseas Indian community was happy and overwhelmed with joy, and they were in tears, and how they reacted, so that is the kind of moral support which overseas Indian community wants to have from India, and that is what Indians, the relatives of them residing in India, really looking forward to them. So they are ambassadors of India, They are all ambassadors of India, and we really have great love and affection and respect for them.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it's wonderful, and we have, believe me, several questions still backed up and coming into our chat, but I think maybe we're running short on time. But let me see if my colleague Sanjay would be there, the chairman of USINPAC. Sanjay, are you there, sir, please?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Sanjay, would you like to have a couple of quick wrap-up questions with Dr. Sudha Malaiya? Hello, Sanjay, can you hear me, please? I think probably ma'am, would you have some time? Would you please stay on the phone call with us, because we have now our second speaker with whom we'll be having a discussion, and then we'll have a wrap-up with.
I will.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Now may I invite my colleague, Dr. Surbhi Garg. Surbhi, could you please introduce to our callers and to all of us our second eminent expert, please, for this evening's discussion?
Sure, Rabinder. Our second speaker is Professor Russell Green. Dr. Russell A. Green is a Bill Clayton Fellow in International Economics at Rice University's Baker Institute. He is also an adjunct professor in the Economics Department, where he teaches international finance and macroeconomics. His current work focuses on financial market development in emerging market economies. He is also focusing on developmental changes in India. His writing regularly appears in op-ed pages of prominent American and Indian newspapers. Dr. Green has spent 4 years in India as the U.S. Treasury Department's first financial attaché. His engagement in India was primarily focused on financial market development and India's macroeconomy. He worked with others to develop the U.S.-India Economic and Financial Partnership, which was launched in 2009 by Indian Finance Minister Pranab Mukherjee and U.S. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner. With this introduction, we welcome Professor Russell A. Green, and Ravinder, I again hand it over to you to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Surabhi. Once again, welcome Dr. Green, and once again, a small message to our callers and our listeners who are listening and tuning into this program. Please do keep your questions coming in, and we are having a small technical hitch today, but please be rest assured that your questions are coming to us, and my colleagues John and Surabhi would be sharing with me or asking on your behalf as we progress this discussion. Dr. Green, your opening thoughts on the topic of the day today that we have, which is how does one look, or how do you look, let's say, at this past 1 month of the Modi government in India?
Well, thank you very much for letting me join you today. Thanks, Ravinder and Surabhi and Sanjay. And I'll also mention that it's an honor to speak alongside Dr. Malaiya. You know, I have really been quite impressed with the early moves of this new administration in India. It's interesting to hear Dr. Malaiya's comments because I think she follows a broader set of issues perhaps than I do, but I get a bit of a sense of defensiveness in her comments, and I was a bit surprised because I think that the administration, from my perspective, following mostly economic policy developments, has been doing really a pretty good job, and I don't hear a whole lot of criticism on the economic policy front. I think almost everybody in markets and among the economist community is pretty excited about the developments so far. So for somebody who follows economic policy, there have been lots of good indicators of positive changes already in the first month. I would not say that they have been perfect, but, you know, politics never permits perfection. So I think perhaps some of the criticism that Dr. Malaiya has been hearing has been maybe on the other side of that. But anyway, so let me say, looking at economic policy, that Modi's focus appears to be really reviving the Indian manufacturing sector. And I would argue that that's exactly where his focus should be, that that's the most important goal for the government in terms of economic policy. It's a very tough task because it requires improving the business climate, which is a very broad area touching many aspects of economic policy and government machinery. But because it's so broad, even if you don't agree that it ought to be first priority, it's still a valuable goal because working to revive the manufacturing sector will benefit many other aspects of life in India, and I'll clarify that in a moment. But I think it's also a politically savvy goal because it's probably the best opportunity that India has to produce sustainable, inclusive growth. That is, it's the likeliest path for India to create a large volume of high-quality jobs. And if it succeeds, that means big positive changes for lots of voters. So it's also a goal that will take time, but presumably this administration has at least 5 years to work on this. So to get back to answering your question about the administration's performance in its first month, I'll just touch on 4 key tough economic reform areas and kind of review their progress in that framework. So I think the first thing that the government needs to work on is reducing the friction that the government imposes upon business. That is getting to the question of the business climate. And that's how the government interacts with businesses across a complex ecosystem of regulation and taxation. No need to get into too much detail because I think the problems there are pretty well known. And I think everybody expected from the start that this would be Modi's strong suit. And indeed, he is starting off pretty strong. You know, the reason everybody expected Modi to do a good job in this is that while Gujarat had some laws that were more business-friendly or more supportive of agriculture. Much more important to the Gujarat story that sold Modi to the country, I think, was that the way in which laws were applied in Gujarat. So, you know, Modi has a reputation for knowing how to knock heads to get bureaucracies to function well. And we've seen signs of that process already underway in Delhi. Of course, everybody is buzzing about this story that went around in Bloomberg about how the Delhi Golf Club is suddenly devoid of bureaucrats because they're afraid to play golf in the mornings, right?
Sure.
But I think of more substance, there is the infamously slow Ministry of Environment and Forests has already announced the intention to introduce time-bound clearance of processes so that they will limit unnecessary project delays. You have early efforts to develop e-governance and harmonization of compliance obligations across a few sectors of regulations. You've seen good faith efforts being taken to reach out to states to get the goods and services tax introduced. So I think those are some really good early signs, but it's exactly what everybody expected Modi to be good at, which is getting the machinery of the Indian government moving in a more business-friendly manner. The second aspect that they need to focus on is simply producing more of the kinds of public goods that really government is best at producing. These have historically been underprovided in India. We're talking about like education, infrastructure, law and order. Infrastructure is getting lots of early attention from the administration. That's a good thing. We've seen approvals for deals and clear signs that Modi is expecting progress from the bureaucracy. But, you know, infrastructure is an incredibly thorny problem, and only time will tell if this administration will really be able to make a difference, but the early signs are good. Education, maybe the singularly most important program to get right for any country. India needs to have some policy changes, but I think perhaps what it most needs is better on-the-ground implementation. This is an area that's begging for Modi-style hands-on governance, right? Unfortunately, I have not seen much beyond lip service in terms of education other than, you know, some kerfluffles related to higher education. But in terms of primary, secondary education, we haven't seen much action yet. But, you know, it's only been a month. So I would be willing to extend the honeymoon and not be too critical yet on education. I would say the same thing on law and order. I've heard very little. I would feel much better if you heard some noises from the budget speech in a week and a half related to judicial reform. I'd feel good enough, even if we don't have judicial reform, even if they just gave a bigger allocation of the budget to the court system so that it could increase the volume and training of judges and start to reduce some of the backlog of court cases. The third area I'll mention is labor reform. This area, you know, everybody knows is critical for developing organized manufacturing and getting more organized jobs going so that India can get away from this reliance on contract labor as some form of Jugaad Band-Aid to the problem. This has been a totally pleasant surprise for me for this government. You know, about a year ago, Modi was making all the right noises on labor reform. But I would say in the 4 months leading up to the education, he really got coy. And he would say, well, it's important, but maybe we're not going to do this first. Or he wouldn't talk about labor reform at all. It sort of faded away as an issue. And I was worried that his political calculus suggested that it wasn't worth taking on the labor unions once he came to power. But I have to say he appears to have been much smarter than I was in anticipating which direction he would go, because he's really opened the gate, but in a very indirect form. And that is like one of the first things that's developed is that it's sort of like the UPA did with multi-brand retail. He's opened the door for states to change all of these difficult central government labor laws by themselves. So he's allowed states more leeway to adjust labor regulation on a state-by-state basis. This process is already underway in Rajasthan. He's also started a process of consulting with states and organized labor to reduce the burden of the existing regulations as opposed to trying to change the law itself. And he's asked the Labor Ministry to do the same. And so he seems to have figured out a way, rather than set himself up for some sort of big parliamentary showdown and try to get rid of, say, the Industrial Disputes Act, rather having an indirect and somewhat toned down but still moving forward kind of policy on labor union. The fourth point I'll make, and then I'll shut up so that you can ask me some questions, is related to sort of the big institutional reforms that India really needs to see. Modi, I think, can get a lot done, like I mentioned, in labor reforms, just by improving processes, or in infrastructure, by bird-dogging stuck projects, by knocking bureaucratic heads, right? But to make the Indian government work better, even beyond his time in office, the NDA needs to focus on improving the institutions. So in the machinery of government, they're really good at adding oil, but there are some components that are too old and need to be replaced, and that's the process that I would like to see some more. I think this administration has made a good start. Dr. Malaiya had mentioned some of the cabinet reforms, making the cabinet smaller. They've gotten rid of some of these groups of empowered groups of ministers, which was essentially a way to avoid decision-making. And I thought it was brilliant that, very early on he had all the secretaries, the ministry secretaries come and meet without their ministers and tell them, here's my phone number, here's my email, contact me directly if you have any problems, because that really, the lines of authority are really good. I think Finance Minister Jaitley has also made some of the right noises in terms of protecting some of the good institutions that are there. In particular, I look a lot at what happens with the Reserve Bank of India, and not only have they kept Raghuram Rajan as the governor, but they've also put no public pressure on him to steer monetary policy one way or another. I think historically there's been a lot of pressure from Delhi down to Mumbai to tell the RBI what to do, and that's ultimately, from an economist's perspective, a bad idea. Central banks need to have the independent ability to bring inflation down, and this finance minister so far has not been has been allowing them independence. But I would really like to see a few more ambitious institutional reforms. I'd like to see them really institutionalize a culture of accountability, not just by force of Modi's personality, but by reforming some institutions. I think the civil service is far overdue from reform. I think they need to go for privatization of public sector enterprises, not just disinvestment, but real privatization to clear out these cobwebs of government interference in the economy. So anyway, that's kind of my overview of how they've done in the first month. I think they're really off to a good start on economic policy, but it's only been a month, so clearly there's a lot more that needs to happen.
Sure. No, thank you so much, Dr. Green. I think that you've, the 4 points or the 4 pillars in which, or the 4 buckets into which you broke up the discussion or the opening remarks, I think you really covered an amazing, landscape and given us and I think our callers a wonderful idea. Actually, that leads me to any concluding remarks when we were talking about the Reserve Bank of India and the financial markets and all, leads me to 2 specific questions that we have. One is a question if you could quickly answer, and the second one would be where we would really want your analysis. The first question is that how are you seeing the capital markets and especially the bond markets in the last 1 month responding to the new government in India?
I think it's always hard to disentangle how the bond market responds to government policy versus external events and simply, indications of future fiscal challenges. Clearly what's happened in oil markets has had a big impact over the last week or 2 on expectations of inflation, and that has really caused the bond market, the yields have really risen. I think the RBI, the last RBI auction of debt, they had to devolve the auction onto the underwriters because the rates were simply not high enough to attract much interest from bidders. But I don't think that is the fault of the government. That's simply the external events from the rest of the world filtering down into India as it has in most markets. But so clearly the equity market, is just, they're going bananas. They I think, feel like everything, by and large, is moving in the right direction for economic policy. Sort of a lot of the types of things that I mentioned in my opening remarks are the kinds of things that people in capital markets have been wanting to see for a long time, and so there's just a real optimism that the economy is going to turn around and investment's going to start up, and you're going to see really things turning around. And we've also seen some folks coming onto the primary market and issuing new capital, and more signs that there's a train of folks coming into equity markets to issue new capital. My sense is, you know, the economy, if you just look at the economic indicators today, the economy has not really turned a corner yet. And so what is going on in capital markets is all forward-looking. This is what capital markets are supposed to do, right? Because the price today is supposed to represent future profits. So it has to be very forward-looking. I think you're going to see a disconnect for a while because no matter how good the Modi government's economic policy execution is, it's going to take a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years before some of these policies are really going to have a big impact that's tangible from a macroeconomic perspective. So I think you're going to have a long time where markets are really doing a lot better than the economy itself. But you know, I think there's nothing wrong with that. As I say, they're supposed to be forward-looking.
Great, sir. Thank you so much. The leading question now that I wanted to ask you was that India's infrastructure finance needs are supposed to be somewhere in the range of $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion or some such number. And typically such needs are, you know, 70-30 debt equity kind of a structure, right? Generally assuming, let's say. Now, in that case, if particularly the Indian government were to be looking at some diaspora-focused bonds, do you think there is an appetite? If not an appetite, do you think there's a good scope for it? That is, if the Indian government were to come out with some bonds, which are, let's say, infrastructure bonds or whatever be their terms and conditions, which are, let's say, targeted specifically at the people of Indian origin, public NRI, the Indian diaspora community, as one of the ways of partially raising some debt. Would that be, what would your thoughts be on that?
My guess is that would be very well received. It's essentially been done before. I think the last time that the government of India went to the markets with a straight government of India bond, it was exactly such an instrument that was targeting the NRI community. And my sense is, you know, that probably the diaspora shares the same sort of optimism that capital markets domestically do. In fact, they're given the FII flows, the foreign institutional investor flows, that is foreign money coming into Indian capital markets over the past month, or frankly the past 3 months. My guess is that a good share of that represents NRI money. There's clearly going to be an appetite for it. Now, the real question is whether that is the best option for India. There's, you know, the infrastructure assets that India would be building, to the extent that they generate revenue, are generating revenue in rupees. And so one of the things that economists have been, or frankly, finance ministries, really more than economists, have been trying to do is to avoid any sort of currency mismatch where you're borrowing in a foreign currency but have your income in your domestic currency. And so I think to the extent that they try to tap the NRI community, they need to be very cognizant of that. And so, you know, the ideal sort of structure for something like that would be to issue it as a rupee bond, denominated bond, and see how that goes. Now, the World Bank has been making some progress, has sort of initiated the process. They've borrowed in rupees for their own fundraising purposes to try to generate an offshore rupee borrowing market. And so to the extent that that market is developed, that is an area where the government of India might think about issuing such a bond. But they also have to balance it with other capital raising needs and their general borrowing calendar, because you know, on some level, because money is all fungible, to the extent that the government of India is going to be paying for this infrastructure, and I think they hope actually that the private sector will, but clearly the government has to pay, is going to wind up footing part of the bill. How much they actually separate their accounts between this is money that just goes to infrastructure versus general treasury money is not not clear. So anyway, that's more technicalities. But I think that to your bigger question, I think it's the sort of structure that really would fly if they structure it wisely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green. I would have one more question with you, and but before that, let me check with my colleague Sanjay. I hope you're with us, Sanjay. Hello, Surabhi. Are you there with us, Surabhi?
On the line.
Sanjay.
Sanjay is there. Ravinder, go ahead.
Okay, fair enough. So all I just wanted to confirm was that I'll have one more question with Dr. Green, and then I'll hand it to Sanjay so that he can have a couple of questions with Dr. Green and Dr. Malaiya, who's also with us, I hope. So one question for Dr. Green, and of course we have plenty more, backing up, but I think we are running short on time, is that with the upcoming budget in the next 10 to 15 days, what could be some couple of things which would be a disappointment? Sure, we are all looking at, and hoping for some things, but what could be some one or two, signature things which could flag some disappointment in, let's say, the broader economic community globally? Dr. Green?
Yeah, I think the big item from a macroeconomic standpoint is that India really needs to cut down on its subsidies, and that's energy subsidies, fertilizer subsidies. It needs to be smarter about food subsidies. And so I think a big disappointment would be some sense that the new administration is really embracing the subsidy agenda that was left by the last administration, by the UPA. If there were some, announcements of big new, basically populist type programs, I think that's when markets would really get worried that maybe they had misinterpreted what an NDA government would mean for policy, because there's really hope that the fiscal picture will improve, not just cuts, but more of a shift of the type of spending that the government does, a shift away from subsidies that don't really gain you very much in terms of long-term growth, and more focused on investment in things like infrastructure and education and other important aspects for the government.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Green, and I'll turn it over now to my colleague, the chairman of USINPAC, Sanjay Puri. Sanjay, for you to please have a few questions or thoughts with Dr. Sudha and Dr. Green, and then we say the thank yous. Sanjay, over to you, sir, please.
Hi, Ravinder. Thanks so much for a very, very interesting and enlightening conversation from both Dr. Malaiya and Dr. Green. And obviously we have got literally hundreds of questions that have come in, comments, etc. But I'll try to summarize based on the discussions. I'm going to hopefully start with Dr. Malaiya and ask her something that's been repeatedly asked. Dr. Malaiya, the question that is asked is that there is a very high level of expectation based on Prime Minister Modi's popularity, as you said, the love, the affection. The downside of love and affection is it has created a lot of high, very unrealistic expectations. We have seen this in the United States with President Obama. He came in with tremendous level of expectations, popularity, etc. But that is not sustainable in any political scenario, because Mr. Obama also inherited a bad economy, 2 wars, etc. Mr. Modi is also inheriting a challenging economy, some fundamental issues. How do you bring down the expectation? Because today the world of media is such that there is social media, online media, cable media. You have everybody pounding on and pouncing on even the smallest issue or mistake that can happen. And it will happen because you have just gotten into power. You've been out of power for 10 years. There are leaders, new leaders who have never been in the government. So that is just a fact. But you have high expectations combined with some systematic problems, and then you have some inexperience in the government. And so the question is, how are you going to set expectations within the public, etc.? You talked, Mr. Modi has talked about convincing people, and which is really, we are not clear what he's talking about, and you talked about that also. But can you address this issue? Because I think this will become a challenge, because in India, unlike here, you're continually in a political election cycle. You have Maharashtra coming up, then you have UP and many other things. So this will all become a one continuum thing, Dr. Malaiya.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay, for asking this question. Well, there have been and there are high expectations from Mr. Modi's government, and I think if the expectations are not wrong, because the people of India have been cheated for a long time, and there was nobody to come to their rescue. So now he has become an icon of hope and inspiration, and everybody has started thinking that he is going to be a magician who will have a magic wand, and he will change the scenario. But it's not that. Everybody now has started realizing that, but at least give him some time. So he is able to face the challenges. If you remember that when he was handed over the charge of Gujarat had at the time faced that earthquake, and then after that there was some famine, and there were not many problems, and everybody was saying that nobody is going to take out Gujarat from that kind of situation, but he had been able to do that, and he has moved in the direction. He has done a tremendous growth and development has taken place in Gujarat, and which is really what I say is, I mean, that is why he has been called that icon of the development, Vikas Purush. He has been addressed like that. And the challenges are always there, whether he comes up to their expectations or not. He is capable of facing the challenges, is capable of pacifying the aspirations and the hopes, satisfying the hopes, fulfilling the hopes of the people and satisfying them by his earnest desire and intention to work in their interest and for the welfare of the people of India. That is the foremost thing. When you see the intentions are clear, when you see that they are not biased, and they are not corrupt, so the first thing is to build up the confidence of the people of India, which they have lost in last previous governments. And that is how he is going to build up the confidence of people of India within their, उनके खुद के मन में विश्वास ये पैदा कर रहे हैं वो कि वो खुद भी कुछ देश के निर्माण में भागीदारी कर सकते हैं. They themselves have to contribute to the development and growth of the country, which nobody has appealed earlier. He is the first person in independent India who has appealed like that. It is when Nehruji lost in China war, then he said Aram Haram hai. When there was a food crisis, then Lal Bahadur Shastri ji said ki Kisan or Jai Jawan or Jai Kisan, or tab hum, then we were able to bring up that green revolution in India. But any time, at no given point of time, there was a prime minister who has, given a call to the people and youth of India that come and be a part of the growth and development and be instrumental in the growth of the India. So if you build up their confidence and you boost up their morale, I think he and we all put together are able to face these kind of challenges.
Can I add one point just there? Sorry, Dr.
Dr. Green, please.
As Dr. Russell Green has pointed out, so many areas in which the Indian government has to work. He has already started working in that direction. Mr. Modi has already focused and stressed that we are going to improve our manufacturing area. We have to improve in that. He has already said that he has shown his inclination about the Reserve Bank of India. If they are not going to change him, and we are ready to take anything which is in the interest of to improve for the betterment of the economy of India. So, and as far as this was a very interesting point when there were economic sanctions were put to India, and that at that time Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji floated resurgent bonds. And I was just wondering, when I was talking to Ravinder, I had that in my mind, that the overseas contingent of Indian community is going to support and contribute to the growth and the economy of India by these bonds. And whether if Modi ji gives one single call, I think the overseas Indian community will come up. And
I completely agree with you, Dr. Malaiya. It is the overseas Indian community, and I think Dr. Green will second me. You're probably getting more favorable press outside India than you're
probably getting. They're just waiting for the call from Modi. They're just waiting for the call from Modi.
So you think it's a good idea for him to do this resurgent
100%. Yes, okay, 100%. Because there is one step he has already taken about that, bringing the black money which is lying in the Swiss banks, and he has already constituted that special investigation team. So that also will help.
Absolutely. Dr. Green, you had a point on my issue of expectations and the comparison with President Obama. As you know, what has happened to his expectation and his popularity at this point?
Yes, definitely. Although, of course, every leader faces different circumstances, but your point is very well taken. I was struck. I think Dr. Malaiya had made an excellent point about bringing in everybody. How Modi's message of please come participate in your nation's development is exactly the way that expectations can be managed, in the sense that a lot of the economic policies that need to be pushed through are not going to be completely popular. Certainly cutting subsidies is going to be unpopular. Taking on labor unions or taking on public sector enterprises, the employees in public sector enterprises, these are things that aren't going to be 100% popular. And so I think that if this administration comes to the Indian people in a very honest way and says, listen, everybody knows that our economic growth has declined from 8-9% to now 4.5%. We all need to get on board and we face some tough choices, but we can get back there. We can do this, and this is what we need to do. But you need to back me, stay with me, and get on board with these difficult choices. I think that would help with expectation management. Now, I'm not a politician, so that may be a foolhardy approach, but that would be my advice to the administration.
So, Dr. Malaiya, you're talking about what in the U.S. we call going directly to the people, because these subsidies are going to be a very bitter pill to swallow, because it's very easy to give subsidies, but you cannot take them back. And I think he's seen this with this railway price hike. They announced it, and they had to backtrack on it because of, at least from what is being said, political compulsions. But some of these subsidies are going to be really hard to take back. So you're saying, what you're saying is for him to go directly to the people and talk about joint sacrifices, which is something that President Obama did too when he came into office?
Yes, I think so. That is the best thing to do at present. And if you directly involve people and ask them to participate in the development process, overall growth of the country, they will come forward, and also they will feel happy and feel pride in that they are part of the process, the development process. But if you don't even involve them, they are all the time you have been giving them subsidies and making them lazy and inefficient. So that is what Modi has said in his earlier speeches, that I don't want people of India should ask for more and more things free. They should be able to earn all those things. So that is the message, and this is how slowly and gradually he will be able to build up their confidence and make them involve themselves in the growth of the country. And this is one thing. Well, also, I think the reforms which Dr. Russell Green has mentioned about the judicial reforms, the setting up of the fast-track courts and giving them speedy justice. Also, making certain amendments in the labor laws and the regulations will also help. And he has mentioned about these institutional reforms. That is really very much needed. Reforms in the judicial system, reforms in these All India institutions like Central Bureau of Investigation, like Reserve Bank of India, like Planning Commission, like all the commissions, Minority Commission, National Commission for Women and all. And in all the sectors, like in the educational institutions, up till now, our education system has been based on what we have inherited from the Britishers. It is not based on Indian values. Now there has to be a education system in place which is really based on Indian cultural values and the values which respect everybody in the world based on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam policy. So the Indian education system has to be really totally revamped and redone. And it has to be based on its own national language. You know, there had been a criticism over this also, that this new government is trying to impose upon this Hindi language. No, we don't want to impose any language, but this is our mother language. This is our national language. We have declared so. And why shouldn't we promote our national language? Why shouldn't the country have its own national language? Any country in the world is not. There is no country in the world who is not having its own national language. So why we shouldn't be doing that? So I think by taking such kind of measures, people will believe in his sincerity and the efforts and his labor that he is going to put in for the welfare of the people of India, and they will start believing him. And I don't think we have any challenge to go for the elections, coming elections in Maharashtra and Haryana and other states. I don't think we are going to face any. I hope that we are going to come up with an overwhelming majority, even in Maharashtra and Haryana and other states, wherever we are going to have the elections in October.
Well, thanks for those insightful comments. I had a comment about this black money in Swiss banks. This is an issue that really bothers the diaspora quite a bit because, especially when they live in Western countries with transparency. One of the first things that the new government did, which was really cheered by the diaspora, was setting up this commission. How effective do you think? I mean, is there going to be results, or is this going to be another commission which will submit a report and nothing will come out of it?
No. The Modi government is never going to work like the previous government has been working. It is going to give results, and everything is going to come to a logical conclusion. And I don't think it is going to deliver.
So it will deliver on this point.
Yes.
Dr. Green,
I think this government is going to deliver.
We all have very high expectations. We're all looking forward, and we are all looking to contribute and support that, Dr. Malaiya. Dr. Green.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Really.
No, we absolutely are. I wanted to ask a question to Dr. Green. Dr. Green, what in your mind with Mr. Jaitley's budget that is coming up? Obviously, the expectation set again is very high, and they've given some signals, etc. What do you think, if there are 2 or 3 or 4 takeaways that you're going to kind of see in this budget, especially, is there anything on the GST or taxation that you expect, Dr. Green?
Well, I think in terms of, there's a few aspects that need to be addressed. One is just the overall budget deficit number. What sort of fiscal consolidation is going to be achievable? as I mentioned earlier, I think rather than being focused on cuts right now, the government needs to be focused on improving the quality of its expenditure and shifting more towards investment expenditure, especially in key areas like infrastructure. You know, on the tax issues, I'm always amazed by the detail that that people are interested in reading. This is coming from an American perspective where we don't have anything quite like a budget speech in our system, where the finance minister will get into such minutia of tax policy in a very publicly followed speech. I think most Americans would fall asleep 2 minutes into a budget speech if we tried to do that. But I think clearly the GST is a high priority, but it's not so much of an issue that I would expect to see in the budget speech, because at the moment the key is to get this constitutional amendment passed, and so most of the action on the GST, I expect that the finance minister will talk about it, but in terms of policy, most of the action has to take place at the state level. So it's important to get the states to agree to whatever sort of compensation the central government is going to offer them to make the whole package of moving to the goods and services tax palatable to the state governments. I think more in terms of things that the budget speech will touch on or needs to touch on in tax policy is the DTC, the direct tax code. This is the changes in income tax, corporate income tax, that the UPA government had been trying to pass, and I think that hopefully we'll see some action on that now with the new administration. At least that's where I'm hoping to see. And then, you know, ideally you would see some sort of reduction in the top tariff levels and other kind of minutia, but, you know, I guess maybe I'm despite being an economist, I'm sort of a typical American where my eyes kind of glaze over as we get too much into the weeds of tax policy.
I'm going to ask both of you one last concluding short, brief question, and this is coming from Seattle, Washington, from our listener. Are there any disinvestment plans of any PSUs that we should expect in the very near future? And this is a question to both Dr. Malaiya and to Dr. Green.
Well, I'm not aware of any right now, but there might be some possibility if any PSU is not working nicely, they might have a private-public partnership, but I really don't know. As of now, I'm not aware of any such plan, because I don't think the previous disinvestments have worked well, and they will make the PSUs more economically viable. That is how they're going to improve, and they might float some shares of them, but I don't think they're really going to disinvest. But anyway, I'm really not sure about it.
Yeah, I would say Dr. Malaiya is certainly closer to any decision making in this regard. But what I've read, at least in the financial press, is that there are definitely expectations for share offerings, that is to say reducing the government share in a number of companies coming up soon. And I think Coal India is the one that excites everybody just because it's so large. You know, these are all basically just marginal reductions in the government shareholding. SEBI, the securities regulator, has said that all public sector enterprises that are currently listed have to go down to at least 25% public shareholding. That is, the government's share has to go down to 75% at a maximum of total shareholding. So clearly over the next 2 or 3 years, there, just by dint of, by force of the securities regulation, there has to be some sort of share offerings. Now, from my perspective, I would really much prefer to see an approach that is reducing the government's share below 51%, so that there is some reduction in the government control over these operations. I sort of this one area where I disagree with the NDA government's approach of trying to reform these public sector enterprises rather than trying to privatize them, because I think ultimately, you know, the Prime Minister may be an excellent administrator and very good at getting these enterprises to shape up, but he can't last forever. And so I think in terms of these institutions are just perennial temptations for meddling and all sorts of not so savory activities. And so the country as a whole would be better off if the government got out of the business of being in commerce, and just sort of from a political philosophy standpoint said, this is not something that the government of India ought to be doing. There's no reason why we need to be producing steel anymore. There's no reason why we need to be producing electrical equipment anymore. We're here to produce public goods, not private goods. But
the government is not in the business of doing that.
Yes, that the government should not be in the business of doing that. Yes.
The Indian companies should still produce steel and all that.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Excellent points, excellent comments. Like I said, we've been inundated with questions, and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot. I personally have learned quite a few things. So I thank both our esteemed guests and look forward to a continuing dialogue with both, especially Dr. Malaiya. You stayed up late and really appreciate it, and Dr. Green. With this, I'll want to thank all our volunteers, Dr. Garg, John Zahiris, Ravinder Sachdev in India, Ria Banerjee, Sue Ghosh, and many, many other volunteers who work hard to put this every week together. Now I'll turn it over to John Zahiris. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, everyone who's been able to join us today. We do understand that we've taken you away from your busy weekend. Please watch your emails and USINPAC's events page for our weekly call-in details going forward. We will have next week's call-up as soon as Monday. Please also watch USINPAC's social media portals for any information, timely updates, and other ways you can help the U.S.-India Political Action Committee stay financially strong during this important time in history. On behalf of USINPAC's Chairman Sanjay Puri, co-founders Ravinder Sachdev, Dr. Shruti Garg, and Vic Chauhan, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's call. We'll see you again next weekend at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 IST. Bye-bye.